Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of a speaker series that we are hosting today. My name is Purya. I'm a fourth-year student, and my colleague Heda Raza, he's also a fourth-year student. We invited Pindy Janda, who actually is the general manager for the Specialty and Clinical Division of Imperial Distributors. She's been kind enough to give us her insight on industry, community, and where she thinks our practice or our program is headed. At the same time, you might have seen her through our IAs. I know the fourth-year students have definitely seen her because we met her through our IAs. And so she's a preceptor or like an invigilator essentially during the IAs. And yeah, so more about her. I'll basically give the floor to her just to add anything that she would like. But before I do so, I would like to congratulate you for your recent being basically appointed to the BCPHA board as well. Very exciting. I'm sure you're excited as well.
Yes.
And awesome. And then, and then when we go to the industry section and everything, we'll basically discuss more of your role in the elective, in the industry, and what you essentially do in those areas. But without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Purya. So welcome everybody. Thanks for logging on. I don't think you guys watch regular TV anymore, so you guys can watch your streaming stuff later. So I appreciate you guys coming on. Thanks to Hadar and Purya for having me on board as their speaker in the PrismHealth speaker series. So to kind of give you guys, I'll try to make it quick in terms of what my career has looked like as a pharmacist. So I am a UBC grad of 1997. So when you guys do the math, I am probably old enough to be your guys' mom. When I was in third year, I got a job with London Drugs as a tech. So, and I'll speak to this later too, in terms of like what it ends up molding your viewpoint in many ways, like your rotations or where you end up getting a part-time job. So I worked for London Drugs. So that's where I worked after I graduated. I was there for 19 years. My role before I left was pharmacy manager, as well as certified diabetes educator. And also I was their clinical media spokesperson. So I did all their media for anything that had to do with clinical and pharmacy. So from there, I actually left London and I went to go work for a generic drug company as a drug rep. And I worked as a drug rep for a year, and I was literally going independent pharmacy to independent pharmacy, trying to get them to buy the products from my company that I was working for. That was a year. And then I went to, then I started consulting. And then I went back to dispensing because that's what I know, right? So I worked at a methadone pharmacy for about 6 months. I worked at an online pharmacy. You guys may have heard of it, Express Scripts Canada. I worked there as well. And then I was brought on to Imperial, where I am now. And that was also basically in business development, in sales. And so essentially I was brought on to bring on stores to Imperial. So Imperial, for those of you who may not know, is a full line pharmaceutical wholesaler. So it's like a mini McKesson. It's only based in Western Canada. And that was my role then. And then the title that Purya had shared with all of you is a job that is a division that I had created essentially in January of 2020. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. So I'm still with Imperial. It's been 4 years. Super excited to, going into 2021. I think all of us want 2020 to be over. And then just like on the side, like Purya had mentioned, that some of you may recognize me from IAs because I do work as a pharmacist facilitator. And I also do the opioid training with the BC Pharmacy Association. So I think that's I thought I would kind of share that stuff with you guys now in the beginning. And then if you guys want to formulate questions that we have during our question answer period, that may provide like with some context. So I'll give that back to you, Puri. I'll give you back the mic.
Perfect. Yeah. So Haydar will now go over the questions that he had about community. Oh, and before I give the floor to Haydar, I forgot to mention like how this presentation is going to be. So as you guys saw, there was an introduction at the very beginning, and then right now we'll be talking about the community that Haydar will ask the questions, and basically we're going to have a discussion here. And after that, we're going to be talking about industry and finally the future of pharmacy. In the chat area, I did format something that it says year, name, and the question. So kind of format your questions. And if you would like to ask the question right now or as we're talking about the topics, please do type them in the comment or chat area. And then at the very, very end, we have an open mic. We can either read your questions for you, or you can actually ask the questions yourself at that moment, however you'd like to do so. Yeah, so now I'll just give the floor to Haydar, who is going to ask about the community.
All right. Thanks a lot, Priya. Hi again, Pindy, and hi, everybody. It's really great to see the big turnout we have here. So I appreciate people finding some time out of their day. I'm sure everyone's super busy staying at home.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, but I think, but I think the three of us do appreciate everybody logging on today, because I can understand all of you are just beyond fatigued, right? With everything and the concept of Zoom. So it's great if you guys come on.
And I understand some students even finished their finals yesterday. So it's great that you guys decided to show up here. So like Priya just mentioned a few minutes ago, we're essentially going to be going through sort of 3 different sectors this whole conversation will revolve around, and it'll be very laid back. And essentially the first few questions are going to be regarding community. So I know when Priya and we were going through the program, we are in 4th year now, but when starting off, a lot of students have this concept in their head about going to community pharmacy, but what it is, not everyone really understands, because you have your banner pharmacies, you have your corporate pharmacies, and you have independent pharmacies. And so we thought this would be a really good opportunity to talk to Pindy and see what she has to speak about those individual roles, given that she's worked across many of these over the last 2 decades or so. So yeah, we'll start off with that. If you can just briefly explain, what each type of pharmacy is,
Sure.
and what the pros and cons are of each individual ones.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Because I don't think that there's like a formal component that's taught to the students about the different types of pharmacy practice in community that exists. Especially if you guys end up getting like Shoppers Drug Mart for all of your rotations, then you may not think anything else is out there. So, so we'll start with chain, fair enough, because chain is a huge percentage, huge chunk of the market. So chain pharmacy is corporately owned, and it is top down, meaning the head offices make the decisions, and you as the pharmacist, you are treated as a professional in their organization, but you are basically executing their vision. So it really depends on which corporate you end up signing with. In terms of, so pros and cons, pros, of course, with the corporate is that, they're solid with like fiscally, and as an organization, there is a lot of resources behind them, because they are such a big, behemoth of a pharmacy group. Another pro, speaking from my personal experience, because I did go into a corporate chain like London, was that I wasn't left alone as a new grad, because it is terrifying working like a Saturday night by yourself if you have never had any experience, which is, I hate to break it to all of you, you guys are going to get a ton of Saturday night shifts when you're a new grad.
Yeah, we've definitely been told about those,
right, which isn't fair. But when I was with London, like the store I was at that time, actually it still is after all these years, it was the #1 store in London Drugs, and we used to run 6 pharmacists and like 10 techs a day, and it was all manual, but I always had people with me. And you learn so much, not just from other pharmacists, you guys will learn so much from senior technicians, right? The other part is
Yeah.
you're not busy doing, like, you're never going to touch a cash register when you work for chain. Very rarely would you ever. You always have an assistant. Like, you're not going to. In many instances, you may never even place a pharmacy order. You may never place an order from the wholesaler, which actually I don't agree with. I think each and every one of you should make sure you guys know how to place an order, because there will come a time where you have to. So cons are, yes, you are at their beck and call, in the sense that it can be, it's right now, you know, if none of you are married or have children, it's not something that's on your radar to be mindful of. But as you get older and you guys' lives are going to change, it's tough to live your life 2 weeks at a time where you don't have a set schedule. So I'm being honest with you, it can be really hard on most people, right? If your life partner is somebody who maybe does have like a, you know, quote unquote banker's hours job, then that definitely helps. But like in my particular case, I'm a single mom. So I was lucky that my mom helped raise my daughter, but it was really tough. I worked, you know, I had 3 night shifts a week for the longest time. So that's definitely, I think, you know, the 2 weeks at a time, you know, working a lot of weekends, like especially if you guys have friends and family that always have weekends off, like that's something to be mindful of, that in a chain, you are expected to do your fair share. And that changes with experience when you get into management. So I think that's kind of a good snapshot of corporate there. But and the other pro with corporate, of course, is all the clout that comes with corporate, right? Like they just have, you know, they always get everything new first. They have more buying power, etc. The next one with banner pharmacy. So for you guys who aren't familiar with what does a banner mean, so another word for banner, everybody, is like a franchise, right? So like a PharmaSave is considered a banner pharmacy. There's another one called PharmaChoice. There's People's Drug Mart. There's so many. So what that is, the banner pharmacy will have a head office that will help with developing programs and be a resource center. And they also will help negotiate generic formularies, which I can talk about later if we have time. And but what the banner model does, it lets you have the autonomy of having an independent pharmacy, but then you have the support of this like corporate office in the background, because then you have the strength of them. Good example is like PharmaSave and PharmaChoice. They're both 700 stores strong in Canada, right? So you have like that clout behind that. And then of course we get to independent pharmacies, which is, and actually you guys in Western Canada, BC has the most amount of independent pharmacies in Western Canada. The Lower Mainland probably has the most amount. So independent is exactly like the word is, 100% owner operator driven, your vision. There is so much creativity, and you get to call all the shots, right? So which is so cool. So you can make it what you want to make it. If you want to make it a pharmacy that's focused on, I don't know, vet compounding, then have at it, sure, right? Or if you want to do something that's more women's health, or you're looking at, okay, let's look at what the patient demographic looks like now. And we know that you guys all know that the baby boomers are aging. There's more baby boomers aging than there are young people being born. So think about that in the long run, how this affects you guys in your 20s. 20 years from now, what is that patient demographic going to look like for you guys, right? So there actually is what I'm hinting at is there's a lot of opportunity for your generation of pharmacists graduating because of us old people as we're going to age. So, and I'm, you know, I guess it does come across as a little bit like, well, it seems like Pindy has a favorite. It's just that, don't get me wrong. I bled blue when I worked for London Drugs. I absolutely loved my time there. It was, when I left, it was just, I was 42 years old and it was now or never. That is why I left. I didn't leave on any kind of bad blood or anything. It was just time for a change for me. But those cons that I mentioned did really stand out. It did affect like me. It was tough, especially with, you know, with me being a single mom. But the independent side, like the accounts that we have, and, you know, friends of mine who worked corporate for a long time, because that's usually the path that we see. We see people who had gone into corporate and it made sense because, like, yeah, right out of school, you're like, I just want something easy. Like, I just got to figure stuff out. I don't really know what I want to do. Yeah, go work for corporate. Nothing wrong. You're going to get a ton of experience, right? Without any personal investment from you, you're just going to work. And then they made the leap over. And then they decided to either go banner or independent.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, that's a great point to end, because you know that is something that a lot of fourth year students are struggling with, you know, trying to secure
Yes.
jobs. And with COVID going on right now, you know, everyone's in the same shuffle. But yeah, I think that's a pretty safe way to go about it. You know, if you're unsure about what you want to do, go for corporate. You'll always find jobs. That's one thing that, you know, us students are always wondering, you know, are there jobs out there?
There's
And
always going to be jobs. And sorry to cut you off, Haydar.
Mhm.
Don't, you guys, none of you ever think that you will not find a job.
Mhm.
Okay. And if you guys end up being in a situation, I'm going to sound like a mom here, stick it out for a while. Like, you don't want to be quick to jump, right? Oh, I hate
Yeah.
it here. So-and-so, oh my God,
Mhm.
I'm leaving. No, you're going to stick it out. You're going to be professional. You are going to give this organization maybe 6 months, maybe a year, and then you decide. And there's nothing wrong with leaving, and you will find a job.
Yeah.
You will. And there's that fear. I don't know why pharmacists graduate, all of us. I did too. All of us graduate super insecure. I'm not going to find a job. Yes, you are. Because people need drugs. You will
Yeah.
find a job.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Well, that brings us to our next question. It's a really good transition, actually, because for those individuals who are looking to go into independent pharmacy,
Yes.
I know, well, they have to get drugs from somewhere, and
Yeah.
Imperial does play a big part in that. So I just wanted you to spend a few minutes just talking about what Imperial's role is in helping a pharmacist set up their practice and how to go about their day to day.
Yeah, great question. So, Imperial is Imperial is a wholesaler, and we're full line. So we, like, I used to say Tylenol 3, but I don't know if you guys know that Tylenol 3 is no longer being made by Janssen.
Yep.
So we sell everything from wheelchairs to Lenaltech 3. And in terms of, so I'll give you guys a bit of a snapshot, because you guys need to be aware of generic formularies to really understand the role of the wholesaler and independent. So someone goes banner, a formulary is basically your menu of generic molecules. So molecule, you guys, is the industry word for medication. Like, I don't say medication, I say molecules. So for example, amlodipine has 25 different companies who make amlodipine. Okay. When you have an independent pharmacy or a banner, even corporate, everyone has a formulary, meaning what does that menu look like? So to give you guys a quick 101, you cannot function as a pharmacy without having at least either APO as your anchor or Teva as your anchor. Okay, because they're the two big guns in Canada. And both of them have a lot of single source, right? Like, you know, think about Sulfatrim DS. There's only like 2 companies that make it, right? Like, there's a lot of these like single source things. So you pick one of those as your anchor, and then you go through and pick, say, maybe 3 or 4 other generic companies that you're going to support. So that's a word that gets used a lot. It's another word for saying I will buy from you, is support. And with that, and then you figure out your menu. Like, okay, so I'm going to carry this company. I'm going to go with Mylan. I'm going to pick 10 molecules from Mylan for this. I'm picking 10 of this, 10 of this. And so it's a lot. Like even me describing this to you guys are like, oh my God, this is just like so complicated, right?
Yeah.
So for an independent pharmacy, it can be a lot because you're managing your entire business, right?
Right. Okay.
So the role of Imperial is that we had set up a program which is called Complete Pharmacy Solutions. And what that program is that the pharmacy still has complete autonomy as to who they're going to buy from, but there's key vendors involved. It's actually APO, Teva, Pharmascience, and a few others. And so what we do is we streamline their payment structure for them.
Right.
with that.
Okay.
So that's like, I mean, that's the rebate model, you guys, now is not as important in terms well, there's no choice. It's just, it's not as significant in the compensation to a pharmacy owner that it used to be 15, 20 years ago. Because the money so that's why there was such a push to get everything more over to clinical services, because you're not making money from generic rebates. The other part, to Hader's question, like what else do we do to support? Well, you know, we do that connectivity with different vendors. Okay, do you need to get a method dose machine? Okay, well, we have that set up. Like I actually have a C101 starter kit that up together, and I base it off the college requirements for them to get their license issued by the College of Pharmacists to the pharmacy. So I have everything listed that they need, and then I have the corresponding Imperial item number. So just like little things like that, because it's really stressful opening up your pharmacy. One of my OEE students, so I do teach a 473 rotation, and his project was how to open your own pharmacy 101. And that was his project with me. And so it was actually great. He had a lot of fun with it. And it was really cool to see someone who actually had no idea about it. And then by the end of his 4 weeks, he knew how to, when he wants to, when and if, he'll know how to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. I think we'll have more time to discuss more about community in the Q&A session. I think what we'll do is we'll move on to our industry aspect. And I know
Sure.
Purya has perhaps some questions. So I'll pass the floor over to Purya, and then we'll get started from there. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so before I start with the industry, I would like to again mention the fact that you actually do organize, and you are the coordinator of that elective. In fact, it's the only elective that basically exposes us to industry, and there is no more like exposure to industry in BC, at least, or West Coast essentially. So and I remember during it was the third year, end of the third year or whatnot, that we got an email just briefly mentioning that such a residency exists in East Coast for industry. So really, let's start by like asking you, what is industry? What does it contain? And when someone talks about pharmacy industry or pharmaceuticals, what are they referring to? What are the jobs? What is pharmacy industry?
So, okay, so the definition that I've come to accept of what industry means is anything that is non-dispensing, that is related to the pharmacy world.
Right.
Okay, that could be someone who is a supplier of compounding, still technically industry. It would be a wholesaler like McKesson, Imperial, KNF. Then of course, the last part is manufacturers and vendors. So that's usually the first thing that people think of when they think of industry, is they always think of drug companies, but there's a lot more to industry. It's every other support business to a community pharmacy. That's what you would consider industry. Yeah. And what was the other part to your question? I'm not sure if I answered the full question.
Yeah, so no, that basically that gives an introduction to this section. As I mentioned, like they briefly mentioned the fact that there is this residency back in East Coast that University of Toronto actually provides. So my question for you would be, my next question for you would be that, to what extent does that residency help pharmacists find a job in pharmacy industry? Because I have at the same time heard that we don't really need to do that residency like hospital residency, that you do need to have a hospital residency in order to work at a hospital. But that's really not the case with industry. It's just like an extra, let's say not extracurricular, but an extra positive point in a sense towards getting into industry. So
great question. So the thing is, because you guys have been in school, you guys have little to zero experience, right? Yeah. And doing an industrial residency will be like an extra check on your resume or CV. Even though it's not practical experience, it's an extra qualification, right? Because the experience isn't there. That doesn't mean that it's necessary to get into industry. One of the main reasons why U of T probably has, are they all out of U of T?
Yes.
So yeah.
Okay. Not surprisingly, it probably has the biggest endowment for a faculty of pharmacy across Canada.
It's true. Sorry, I cut you off. It's true U of T. So it's the companies that you apply to.
Yeah.
And it's actually
So
true
the companies
U
are
of
all going to
T's
be,
network.
yeah, I'm surprised there wouldn't be anything, can't remember what pharmacy school it is in Quebec. So all head offices for pharma companies are either in Toronto or Montreal. That's it in Canada. There's no head offices anywhere else. Everything's based in Toronto, Montreal, so, because maybe I'm biased because my path did not involve an industrial residency to get into industry, but I also had a ton of experience.
Right.
So the answer to you guys, you're like, well, Pindy, that doesn't help us because we want to get into industry in a couple of years after graduation. So, and what kind of jobs would that look like? So for a pharmacist, because you are a clinician, right? Your value you could be a salesperson for sure. You're going to be like, a totally overqualified salesperson. Your value is actually collaborating with the physicians. That's a huge value to a pharma company. And so when you have pharma reps, you have sales reps who call on doctors who basically suck up to them to get them to write prescriptions. Those people don't know anything about science. Like they just read a script. No offense to anyone who has any relative or friend in it, but they don't. And a lot of the people I know are first to admit it. So what pharma companies have as positions that would make sense to a pharmacist like you guys would be a medical science liaison, or the abbreviation or the acronym to that is MSL. And the medical science liaison, I think, is a fantastic type of position for a pharmacist, especially you guys who will be PharmDs, because you're going to be talking to physicians on the clinical side. You're going to be talking therapeutics, you're going to be talking disease state, patient journey, and outcomes, monitoring parameters, you name it. You are all science. There is no money involved at all. You don't talk about the price of the drug. You don't talk about anything. So that's really where the biggest value would be. The thing is trying to get these pharma companies to understand, because traditionally, MSL roles have been filled by nurses.
Yes.
And everyone else's videos are off, so I can't see them roll their eyes. But yeah. And so just as of late, we're starting to see more pharmacists involved as MSLs. So yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at. And I think Poria, your next question is about, do you have to be in Toronto to do industry?
That exactly.
Yeah. So the answer is that you don't have to. Right? Because as a medical science liaison, newsflash, we have doctors here in BC, right? You need MSLs, and it costs, they're not going to pay, especially during COVID, no one's going anywhere. You need, local likes to talk to local, right? Like we all know, like when we meet someone from somewhere else and they come in with attitude, we all get our backup. We're like, okay, you just think you're better than me. Right? Like when I went to PDW for the first time and the people from U of T walked in, they all walked in like they were just, every single person just looked like next top model. It's like, no, you don't. Right? So there's a lot of value to being local. And so I do, it's really tough for us out here. It's really tough in BC. So much of it is that you almost have to create the opportunity yourself. Okay. And a lot of it comes through networking. I'll give you guys some advice. Do not ever give attitude to any drug rep who comes into your community pharmacy. If someone's coming in to talk to you about NRC, they're coming in to talk to you about NICS, be kind, be nice. You don't know when you're going to meet that person in the future. That person who's an entry-level rep is very much probably on track to be a manager in 10 years. And you could be a manager in 10 years. So treat that person with a lot of respect and build your networks. Even when you're in community pharmacy, you guys will see preceptors you've been with and how some of them will just like totally ignore a rep. And I know that happens because I've seen it happen,
Yeah.
right?
I've seen
But
it.
then
I've
you'll,
seen it in my
It
practicums. Yeah.
happens.
yeah,
Yes.
but then there's the other
Likewise.
pharmacists who are, I'm not telling you to sit there and become friends with them and add them on your Instagram. No, I'm just saying be respectful and just say, hey, yeah, okay, so what was that product again? Oh yeah, so how does that work? Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, and you know what? You will make that person's day and they will always remember you. And you just don't know how that network is, and then your network will start to build, and it's building authentically. If you are nice to people and sucking up to them just because you think they can do something for you, well, newsflash, that person can tell it's not real.
Yeah.
So just the same way that all of you guys want to get respected by doctors because you're going to have PharmDs, you guys give the same respect back. And it will take you so far. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
So, regarding the relocation to
Yes.
East Coast, especially, so I know there are opportunities here in BC as well, but you basically mentioned that we have to make our own opportunities here.
Mm-hmm.
But I know
Do
most
I
of
have
these
to move?
companies are back in. Exactly. So
So,
if you want to have like a higher chance of getting employed by these companies, because yes, by the definition that you gave initially about
yeah.
pharmacy industry, there are opportunities here as well. But let's talk about the opportunities that are specifically to pharmaceutical companies. For example, let's say Roche, Biogen, Bayer, like those kind of companies. Would
Yeah.
working for those companies, let's say after the residency, after you're accepted to the residency, or if you decide not to go to the residency but you would like to be employed in those companies in a specific positions that they provide, such as the position that you mentioned, such as medical access or like medical strategy, marketing strategy, those sorts of jobs essentially. Because I do believe at the end of the day, having that background knowledge about drugs and medications would help a person who would like to, let's say, do sales in those companies. So if those companies are the focus here, would relocation then be a part of that equation?
May or may not be.
Okay.
It's not, I don't, it really depends. I think, is it U of T or somebody who has some sort of a program which is really geared towards, it's called toxology or something. And a lot of people in toxology try to get into pharma. I think it's at U of T. I've like from colleagues of mine in work who have the head offices in Toronto, or people I know who moved from, Vancouver, Calgary, etc., out to TO for work. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities, but there's way more sharks who want your job.
Right.
Like, you do have to really build a tough skin. You do, for sure. There are a lot of opportunities, but because it's way bigger than we're used to being from. I'm not telling you not to leave, disclosure, I'd be so happy when my daughter moves away, because I think she needs to just go wherever. I don't think she's
Right.
going to stay here. I personally think she's going to move to Toronto myself. But anyway, I think don't let it hold you back or turn you off of pursuing wanting to be in industry just because you decide to stay in BC or in Alberta, like out west.
Right.
There will be opportunities. And then the question is, okay, well, how do I build that experience, Pindy? Like, how do I do that? Right. So one part is the networking. I know I sound like, like everybody else who's older says you need to have a proper LinkedIn profile. Damn straight, you need a proper LinkedIn profile.
Okay. Right.
Never anything personal on there, nothing political, and just share things that have value. And there's some people, young students, young graduates such as yourselves, who have written, say, white papers, but not necessarily a really long white paper, but just a post. And it's just kind of getting that, that's something you've done. Even if you just published it on LinkedIn and it was your own LinkedIn, technically you are published. Mm-hmm. If you guys catch my drift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's not to say that it can't happen. It just may be a little tougher to happen, but it can. because there's many different factors. It's not everybody is as mobile, and I don't think it's something that someone should get turned off of by, but it is tough because you have to be able to stand out from that commerce grad from Sauder who also wants to work for a drug company.
Yes.
You know
That's
what I'm
what I've
saying?
heard. That's what I've heard, the difference between doing the residency. Basically, that's where the residency kind of comes and helps you, kind of like differentiates you from
Well,
that
because
person
you already
who...
have a built-in network. Because
Exactly.
most students who get a residency industrial, they end
Very
up working
true.
for the
Very
company
true.
because
Yes.
they already know you. And
Mhm.
it's actually, it is so tough hiring people. It's just easier to just hire your student because you already know them
Right.
for a year.
Yeah, this is why
Right.
networking is important, right? This is why we do all these events and
Oh,
really push
absolutely.
students to go and put themselves out there.
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, like the 9 students who showed up today, like, good on you guys for showing up, because everyone else I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to have a condo in Yaletown by the time I'm 30. Well, then do something, right? And
Right.
networking is extremely important, extremely. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
You
Well,
want to ask?
yeah, that brings us to our last segment for tonight. And then after that, we will have about 15-20 minutes for question and answers. And that'll be more laid back and everyone can go about and, asking whatever they want to ask at that point. But the last portion is sort of about the future of pharmacy, or
Okay.
what's on the horizon.
Oh,
We see a
yeah.
lot of news coming from our neighbors down south, hearing things like Amazon Pharmacy coming over there, and there's competition growing in the outpatient setting. I'm not referring to hospital because that's not the topic for today,
Right.
but and that's going to happen in Canada too. It's
Uh,
going to happen
yes.
at one point.
Yeah. Yes and no.
Right.
So I think one of the best protective mechanisms we have is that our drug prices are controlled by each province individually, right? Our drug prices, it's not a free market, right?
Right.
So I'll give you guys a good example. Fluticasone nasal spray.
Yes.
In 1997, when I graduated, a prescription was $28 Canadian, including dispensing fee, for brand name Flonase. Brand name, fancy stuff. This identical Flonase nasal spray in Blaine, Washington was $80 US.
Oh my.
Wow.
That's a huge discrepancy.
Right?
Yeah.
So Amazon Pharmacy he doesn't care if he loses money because he makes it on toilet paper or whatever else that man makes it off of. And I'm glad you're recording it because I will say, I will put that on record, right? So he just wants market share.
Right.
Yes.
He doesn't care if he loses
Influence.
money, right?
Right.
But if he's going to get the kind of volume he gets with everything else, then it becomes a volume play. And even if it's like a 0.01% of something that he's making, he will make money. Amazon is most likely the province that will most likely see an Amazon pharmacy come first will be Alberta, I think, out of all the provinces, because Alberta has put through a bill where they are allowing corporations to own pharmacies and corporations to own hospitals. So that'll be very interesting. But for someone like Amazon, if he just wants to do it to satisfy his ego, he might do it. He's not going to make money off it.
Yeah.
So
What about
how does it affect us?
What about the method?
Sorry?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So how does it affect us? That's why it's so important, you guys. You're not just graduating as PharmDs because it looks really nice beside your name. It's about being clinical. Yeah. You have to stand out. There is value to being a real person, a real pharmacist to a real patient.
Yeah. And I'm
not right. I'm not ordering beans. I'm not ordering like Colgate toothpaste. Like if I'm getting drugs from my dad, I want to make sure that the pharmacist is like someone I know and trust.
Right.
Yeah. That's where your value is. And you guys are going to be totally different types of pharmacists than we were. or are, right? So
Yeah. And this is a conversation I've had with many of my colleagues, students, in my class, and people who are already working. At the end of the day, we are being trained to have all this clinical knowledge. And, this is just my personal take on it, but I feel like it's a bit of a disservice if you're not utilizing the tools that you're given. And who knows where the future will be in the next 5 to 10 years. But what's guaranteed is at least you're getting these clinical skills and clinical knowledge.
yes,
And how do you implement that in a community pharmacy, right? And that's where an independence seems so exciting, because you can do, point of
yes,
care testing and, things like that. So if you could speak a little bit about, what things
yeah,
that are
I'd
already
love to.
present, and then what kind of things are on the horizon regarding that.
Yeah, like, okay, so you guys know, like, have you guys all seen that chart that's put up by the Canadian Pharmacists Association that compares scope of practice of
Yeah.
every jurisdiction?
Yes.
You
Yes.
guys
I think
know
they're showed in school to every class, I think, now.
they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
It's all
I
green in
think first
Alberta.
year.
Yeah.
Alberta's all
Mhm.
green.
Yes.
So Alberta, the college was so aligned with the PharmD program being implemented at the U of A faculty. It was in complete alignment. Here you had students graduating with PharmDs, and hey, go at it. You got a full scope. It makes complete sense, right? What's challenging in BC is that our college has not caught up to your guys' education.
Yeah.
Right? The other thing is, and I will be brutally honest, and Hadar and Poria know this about me, a lot of the students I've come across, everybody thinks that, a lot of them think that they are going to be too good to work in a community pharmacy, which is a little hard for me to accept, because it is a bit heartbreaking, because at our core, we should be about helping patients, right?
Yeah.
And you guys need to have before, like, that whole saying that you got to learn how to walk before you run.
Yeah.
You guys need, there is such honor in being a community pharmacist. There is nothing wrong with being a community pharmacist.
Yeah.
Right. And going to what Hadar said about Hadar saying having now, and how does that look like? How does that translate into community? So the degrees you guys are getting, it may not be 100% verbatim transferable and translatable into community pharmacy right now. But if you give up, then what was the point of all of this? You guys are the ones who are going to be the ones to make the changes.
Yeah.
But you do it in a way that is a walk. It's not going to be a sprint. It's going to be respectful. And if you always keep the patient care front of mind, you cannot be wrong. That's what you guys got to remember. So it's going to be a challenge. Execution wise, until our College of Pharmacists seriously lets us do what we are capable of doing, it is going to be really tough. This nonsense about prescribing for minor ailments, why is this even an option? It should just be full on prescribing like it is in Alberta. So I'm doing a program with 20 pharmacies in Alberta starting in January, and we are going to be doing point of care testing. Hadar had mentioned, Pindy, if you can talk to point of care testing. The community pharmacist is going to be doing point of care testing for hepatitis C, for HCV. Then based on the result, the pharmacist is going to order the lab work. The pharmacist is going to order the lab work. They're going to go through. The Alberta government has a program called the Pathway to Elimination for HCV. And they originally had only nurse practitioners prescribing pan-genotype therapy for hep C.
Right.
So, pan-genotype is what? It's Epclusa or it's Maverick, right?
Yeah.
Now it was opened up to pharmacists. So my program is the community pharmacists who are part of this program. They are going to have connectivity to one hepatologist in Alberta South and one in Alberta North. Both pharmacists at Pindy, those pharmacists have our blessing to prescribe. We just need to if they can just send us a communication, we will co-sign if the patient needs coverage. If they don't have prescribing rights, because you need APA there. You don't just automatically get prescribing rights in Alberta, or we'll just co-sign the prescription. And look at that. Look at how many more patients we're going to capture with HCV and eliminate it. Why? Because they actually let pharmacists be real pharmacists and do everything they can do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really exciting because from what they've shown, it's been super effective in terms of, stopping the replication of the virus. Like a lot of these folks are actually being treated in a more efficient manner by doing this.
Oh, absolutely. I think, and so for those of you who don't know, I have had really cool conversations with Hadar and Toria and working. Both of them on their own volition reached out to me and they had conversations with me when I used to be their PF. I was walking through, I don't know if they remember, I was walking through the upstairs where it's super dark, like you actually want to probably go to sleep up in the building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I walked by their table of them and their crew, and then they had questions
I
for
remember.
me. And they started
now.
talking to me, and and it was great. And I was so impressed that they're like, well, we just want to ask you about this. And I'm like, okay. And that's how it started. And we've had a lot, Hadar and I in particular have had a lot of conversations about point of care testing. Yeah. And what that's going to look like. And yeah, there's definitely a role for it for sure.
Okay.
But yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that wraps up sort of our 3 segments. And I think we're right on time. We got about 15 minutes. So what I'll do is Puri and I will sort of moderate through the questions. If anyone has anything to ask, you can either type it out or we can enable your mic if you want to just verbally speak. And then, yeah, we'll go from there. All right, let's see.
I have a question. So you said that you had a student for the practicum that you teach the skill. Is it the elective course that you teach the skill of how to open an independent pharmacy, where we can learn these skills? Or
Okay, so yeah, good question, Nadia. So it's an OEE rotation, and it's the 473 rotation, right? So that's the non-direct patient care. So my rotation is basically the student comes for 4 weeks and we both decide on what the project's going to be. So this particular student really, really wanted to open his own pharmacy eventually. So I suggested, I'm like, hey, what city do you want to open it in? So he told me what city he wanted. I'm like, all right, go at it. A to Z. How are you going to open a pharmacy? That's your project. And that's how he did it. Oh, and I've had students, but most of the time, because my division is clinical and specialty, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, Crohn's disease, colitis. My latest student, Leo, who was with me, Leo did it on MS, and actually Leo also did a component on point of care testing. So it really depends on what the student ends up picking with me. I really give the students a lot of autonomy. It's 4 weeks. And apparently it's luck of the draw. I don't really know how it works with OEE because as a preceptor, we're not allowed to pick our students. We have no say. And I guess it's whatever the way the students rank it.
Yeah. Do you train like outside as a volunteer? Like if I want in future to learn more skills, or it just?
So there are opportunities to possibly be an intern with Imperial, but it's not always the fixed time frame or the fixed amount of time. Like I have had interns before. Some students only did maybe 1 project for me. Some did 1 or 2. Some did about 3 or 4. It really depends. And then there's an interview process behind that and such. And if I do decide to open up more internships, starting probably after April, then I have to find out from Leah at the faculty, like where I would post that information. And then it's basically like applying to any job. Like it's like there's a CV, cover letter. I need to know why you want to do it. It's not just to make your LinkedIn look pretty, right? So it's, yeah. And it's a good practice for the student too, in the sense that you have to qualify to be the intern. Like you don't just automatically get it. Yeah. You're welcome.
Awesome.
Any other questions at all?
Oh.
It's kind of more for the future aspect, but do you ever see industrial residency being offered in BC possibly?
Good question. If anything, it's a really good question, Maria. Like, it would be cool. There's a lot of vitamin manufacturers out here, a lot. And it's just so interesting to me that that's never been tapped into, as in terms of supplements or vitamins, natural health products, and the role of the pharmacist. I think that's something that should be explored by the faculty. I think it could be a really cool gig.
Yeah, I think there was maybe like a nutrition elective or something talked.
Yeah, but I don't think there's actually, so there's actually a company that I do consulting for, and they are based out of Coquitlam, and they sell different supplements. And I work as a pharmacist consultant for them. I mean, I'm ending my contract soon out of my choice, but I think there is potential. It just hasn't been explored because maybe they never thought about it. It's kind of out of the box thinking, but the Hadar and Emporia will tell you that's how I always think, is out of the box. Like, how do you highlight the role of the pharmacist with that? Because I know all of us cringe when we hear, oh, vitamins, right? Because we really think about therapeutics and like traditional, like our actual medication, but there is a role for supplementation. Obviously, guys, like, you guys have seen the size of, like, the Kirkland brand calcium, like, people buy that stuff. So as the clinician, as a pharmacist, what is your role? So I think that kind of a bit of a tangent answer, Maria, to what you said, but to what you asked, but I think it's something that should be explored more. I don't really know how OEE does their stuff. I don't really know how any of that stuff works. That's not really my place or my space. But the reason this 473 rotation even exists is because Alex from OEE reached out to me. Him and I used to work together at London Drugs, and he asked me if I would do it. So
thank you.
Yeah. But I think Poria and Hadar, like, they will probably give you guys my email address, and like, if you guys have questions and stuff. They both know I'm not the quickest person to respond. It's brutal, I know, but I welcome you guys to reach out. Please consider me like someone as part of your new network. And if you guys have questions, reach out, and I'd be more than happy to help you guys out to the best I can. I think I really, what I'm most looking forward to is to see a pivot in our profession, to have all of us realize that we can all collaborate and work together, and in the end really stop being our own worst enemies, and we don't need to prove our worth. We already are worth something. And just take care of patients. When you take care of the patient, everything else falls in line. Everything else. And that's it. Those are my parting words.
Oh, those are great words there. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's about it for tonight. From my behalf and on Puria's behalf, we'd like to thank you, Pindy, for taking the time out for attending.
Absolutely.
And we would also like to thank the students that attended our talk. If you guys enjoyed this, we may continue doing this into multiple series, part series. And if you guys want to reach out to us, you can contact us at contact@prismhealthgroup.com. Or we also have a YouTube channel. So after this is all recorded, we're also going to be posting it on YouTube for you guys, you can watch it later or share it with your friends. But yeah, that's pretty much it for us. And
one last thing, if you find we could improve these videos or these interviews in any way, let us know, and maybe Pindy would come again and talk more about other stuff.
Yeah, anything for Poria and Hadar. I just think everybody wants to hear it from me again.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Take care.
Have a good one.